Godzilla, King of the Monsters, is a 2019 monster film, obviously, partially written and directed by Michael Dougherty. It tells the story of a post-2014 Godzilla attack world where they are trying to determine which Titans are for the human beings and which Titans are against the human beings on the Earth. So like I said, this is technically a sequel to the 2014 Godzilla film. I was partially watching it throughout the day when I went and saw Godzilla, King of the Monsters. You don't necessarily have to know everything about the 2014 film, but it's good to get involved in the environment and know some of the characters and the organization of Monarch, because Monarch's very important in the entire MonsterVerse world that's going on between the Godzilla and the Kong Skull Island films. So with all of this said, I was pretty excited for Godzilla. I'm not what you would call a super extreme Godzilla fan, but I did see the original, I really did enjoy it, so I had some high hopes for this film. On top of that, I am a huge fan of Michael Dougherty. I think his last two films, Trick or Treat and Krampus, are some great horror films. He's one of my new favorite modern horror directors, so I was hyped to see what he would bring to a giant monster film like Godzilla. And I didn't like it. I did not like Godzilla, King of the Monsters. So before I jump into everything about this film, I just want to say, when you hear negative criticism online, especially from me, I don't want to give a film a poor review. I try to enjoy every movie I go to because I know how hard it is to make a film. Everything that goes into a film. Plus, with a film like this where I love the character and the source material, and I love the director, there's so many things that could be right about it. But in the case of Godzilla, King of the Monsters, it flopped for me hard time. There was nothing very redeemable about this film to me. And you might be saying, well, I've heard that there's some pretty cool monster fights in this movie. Yes and no. There are definitely more monsters involved in this movie as opposed to the 2014 Godzilla. But I feel like in terms of that film, the payoff for seeing the monsters was well worth it. And in this film, there's no weight given to the monsters. They just kind of appear. You don't exactly get how big and grand they are. They just kind of show up and do their thing, and there's no real rhyme or reason to it. So yeah, that's I guess the only partial positive, but there are a lot of things that I wish could have been improved upon with Godzilla, King of the Monsters. The first thing is, again, the weight of these monsters. These are huge, epic creatures, and though they are given some cool, epic reveals in this film, I feel like they're not taking the time to be introduced properly and just are kind of shoehorned in for monster movie references. I do love myself a good monster movie reference, and sure, there are plenty of callbacks to the other Godzilla films in the franchise, but I think they went a little overboard of introducing too much too fast, and they didn't let the story finish itself in the process. And that's ultimately what hurt this film. The story and the characters behind the decisions. And I know what you might be saying. You might be saying, hauntformer, I'm not involved in the story. I don't care about the story. I want to see monsters punching each other. And I completely agree. But without proper decision-making by the characters to have these monsters come together, everything falls flat. The whole reason that the monsters are fighting is because of the human characters, and they fail in this film. Even though I like a lot of the actors and actresses who are playing the characters, they're only one-dimensional, they only serve the plot, and therefore they are not interesting, and I couldn't care about what was happening because their decisions and their characters kept changing throughout the movie. It didn't make any sense to me, and it was really frustrating because, again, I really wanted to like this movie. I really did. How hard is it to mess up a monster movie? But it was boring, honestly. This is one of the few cases where I've actually wanted to walk out of a movie. Despite all of the grand visuals, the awesome monsters on this huge 40-foot screen, I just wanted to leave because the story was not interesting, and the whole point of the monsters fighting was dumb. The other thing that I didn't really care for is the over-reliance on the CGI. I get that they have to do that because these are huge monsters and there's no way to do them practically, but to have some close-ups of some practical monsters would have been really neat to see, especially knowing Michael Dougherty's love for practical effects, as we saw in films like Krampus and his love for movies like Gremlins. These are all computers just fighting each other. There's no weight, there's no energy given to the monsters in this movie. And again, though people are saying you see a lot of monsters in this film, I would have to say that a lot of the screen time is eaten up by the human characters, and again, I just didn't get their motivations in the film. Another thing that was a big thing that I noticed throughout the film is that there's a big blue tint throughout the movie. It's a very dark and dim movie, and it just after a while weighs on you, especially for a lot of the inside scenes. It felt very drab, very bland, and it added to the boredom that I was experiencing while watching Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Some of the soundtrack was really interesting with its callbacks to the original 50s score, but a lot of it just felt the same to me, and as it went on, a lot of things seemed repetitive, like, okay, we're scientists, okay, we see the monster, we have to act now, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And it got, after a while, a little bit on my nerves, and I was ready just to see the final action scene so I could go home. Man, I feel like a downer, and I'm sorry if I sound like a negative Nelly. And you know what? If you want to go out and see Godzilla, King of the Monsters, please do. Don't let this review keep you from seeing it, but I want to be honest and upfront with you guys because, you know, honesty is the #1 policy. And I want to make sure you know that there are movies that I don't care for. And as much as I wanted to love this Godzilla film, I just didn't. I hope Michael Dougherty can get back on the right track of whatever he was doing before. I think the case could be that he was directing a lot of small-scale films, and when you have a film as grand as a Godzilla film, it has to be in a unique kind of hand, and maybe he's just better off doing these smaller films. And that's not a bad thing on his part. He's great at what he can do, but sometimes other stories have to be left to other people. Yeah. Godzilla, King of the Monsters was just not for me, and I would have to go on record saying that I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 skulls on the R.I.P. Reviews rating scale. Yeah, I'm very upset, and I'm sorry if this was a downer review, because remember, I do love the classic Godzilla, and I recommend you go check it out, and even check out the 2014 Godzilla. And if you are a big fan of the character, go see this new movie. I don't want to keep you from it, and if you love this movie, please tell me in the comments that I'm wrong. I want to hear from you. Let me know, did you like Godzilla, King of the Monsters? And if you are a Godzilla fan, tell us in the comments, what is your favorite Godzilla movie? I'll see you in the next video, everybody. Remember, as always, for all things Halloween, this is Hauntformer.